Hi, y'all, and welcome to tonight's live stream. Well, everyone is saying that the case against Brian Walshe is an absolute slam dunk. And let's face it, the evidence against Brian Walshe is overwhelming. The searches, the trash bags, the physical evidence that got introduced today in the courtroom, the lies. It is a mountain of evidence. But here's the truth. Juries are not supposed to convict on overwhelming. They're supposed to convict on beyond a reasonable doubt. And in this case, beyond a reasonable doubt on the crime that he is accused of, Brian Walshe is accused of, includes intent. And the defense is showing up with something. And a few points that if you're a juror, you have to at least wrestle with. So tonight we're going to walk through the case the way the jury will, asking what evidence is devastating, what's just noise and doesn't really impact the case, what is actually going to impact the jury on the biggest question of all, intent, and where, if anywhere, does even the smallest amount of doubt creep in after what we saw today in the courtroom. Because the question at this stage is not just, is Brian Walshe a good person? Obviously not the question. It's, is there any reasonable doubt? Is this beyond a reasonable doubt? So we'll take it apart piece by piece. Let's do just a quick background for those of you new to the case. Brian and Anna Walshe have been married for 10 years and they had 3 children. Anna had gotten a dream job in Washington, D.C. She was commuting back and forth from the family home in Cohasset, Massachusetts. And she was last seen in the early morning hours of New Year's Day, 2023. Just after midnight, they had celebrated with a friend. And now her husband, Brian, who is on trial for her murder, has admitted to disinterring her body. He's admitted to lying to the police. But the question is, can he skate on the primary charge of murdering Anna Walshe? And that's what the case right now is all about. Now, remember, this stream is part of Mods Appreciation Week. Thank you so much for supporting our team who keep the channel going, who keep the chat such a great place to be. I want to start with the part of the case that is not in any way ambiguous. That is the actual evidence that was presented in court today, because the prosecution spent today walking the jury through an extraordinary amount of physical proof today. Yesterday, we did Google searches that were beyond even imagining. And today we're doing physical evidence. So some of it just impossible to explain away, I think. So before we talk about the defense, before we talk about any doubt, I want us to talk about what the prosecution did today and the evidence that is so bad for Brian Walshe. And I want to start by showing you a picture, because I said there were mountains of evidence. It was mountains of garbage. And I don't mean that figuratively. Take a look. I mean, wow, this is not all related to Anna Walshe, but this is the dumpster outside an apartment complex that they found. They took 10 bags out of this that they believed were related to Anna Walshe, and sure enough, they actually got what they were looking for, according to what we have heard in advance from the prosecution, according to what they've said about DNA and other evidence. So not all of that is in yet, but this right there is in. All right. So I also want to remind you, would you please hit the like button? That really helps YouTube know we're here, we're awake, we're alive. And I would appreciate it if you would. If you're not yet subscribed, we would love to have you subscribe. Please hit that subscribe button. Okay. So it wasn't just this. Let's take a look give it just a second. These are just some of the many bags that were shown to the jury today. And what they went through them just rapidly. I'm guessing 30, I don't know, a whole lot. And they would take them over to the witness, say, does this match up with the evidence you found? And the witness would say, yes, it does. And it would be identified, marked as an exhibit. And the jury was told, you're going to have these to take out with you. There were all kinds of physical things that came from those trash bags that were found. Those 10 trash bags. And These bags and many others were brought into the courtroom, some smaller, some larger, and then shown to the jury and then entered into evidence. The prosecution went meticulously through these, presented them to the jury. There was also this sort of ghoulish image of a trash compactor, and these were all shown to the jury. This was apparently right next to the dumpster. And so all of this was done, and I made a list for you of the evidence that they were putting in that they were saying was, and they made a special point of putting this in through the bags and having him identify it and marking them as exhibits. So my guess, although they haven't made this point yet, is that these are the pieces of evidence that tested positive for DNA or for blood related to the DNA of Anna Walshe. So that's my best guess. And you've got, I think, probably the biggest physical piece of evidence that the state has, the COVID card of Anna Walshe. And you can see why that's so important. It's not just that it has something to do with her. It's that it was inside one of the trash bags that had these other items in it. And it's her name. It's right there. It's her name. So if we had any doubt that these relate to Anna Walshe, this removed it. And then her jacket and black socks, which were known to be similar to those owned by Anna Walshe, a purse and wallet, again, with Anna Walshe, from Anna Walshe, or connected to her, green boots, a bracelet, white towels, 1 and 2, both of which were said to contain reddish brown stains, which tested presumptively positive for blood. Now, we will hear from other witnesses who will explain exactly what it is that they tested positive for, but I think we can assume if they bothered to put them in the evidence, this is probably related. Then there was a white bathrobe, also stained, dark gray slippers that were just really gross. I'm not even going to describe it. There was some hair on the bottom. It looked like blood. It was horrendous. Anyway, so red-brown stains and material on it that appeared to be like hair. And then there was a watch. There were apparent hairs with, not apparent heirs, but apparent hairs with, little joke for the lawyers in the crowd, not an heir apparent, but apparent hairs, with red-brown stains, slippers with red-brown stains, the different set of slippers. There were 2 sets, sponge, and a Tyvek suit, as well as a hand towel with red-brown stains. So, and these came in. It took a while to get each and every one to walk through exactly what they were. And we'd already seen just, I'm guessing, another 20 photographs of items laid out on a white backdrop or sheet so that you could see them. These were the ones from bag 1. These were the ones from bag 2. We saw tons of pieces of carpet that appeared to have reddish brown stains. We just saw a lot of different things that were connected to this. So that were introduced into evidence and that we assume the prosecution will connect up. So all of these were incredibly important, obviously, for the prosecution case. And there was also some very strange testimony from about a question that Brian asked his landlord. So the landlord was away on vacation during the time of Anna's disappearance. So while he's gone, he gets a call from Brian Walshe. And this is what he testified to today about what Brian Walshe asked him. Give it just a second. It'll take about 5 minutes. 5 minutes. Oh, not 5 minutes, 5 seconds.
In late December of 2022, what did you do as far as going away on a vacation?
I went to the Caribbean over New Year's.
And during that time, did you ever receive any calls from Mr. Brian Walshe?
Yes.
When?
I believe it was Thursday of the week that I was there, if I'm not mistaken, somewhere in the late afternoon time frame.
And can you tell us about the conversation? What was the conversation you had with Mr. Walshe in this phone call?
Yes. So he had asked me if I had security on my building, and I said, no, not at this time. We were still in the building process. And so I said, why? And he said, well, my wife is missing. she took an Uber this morning, or was supposed to take an Uber this morning to go to DC for work. And we haven't found her, and she didn't show up in DC.
Did he tell you what time she left?
I think in the 4 to 5 range in the morning.
Now, and you said that your building was under construction. What building was being worked on?
Cohasset Imports.
And did you tell him about any other places that might have cameras?
Yes, so next door north of me, there's a home, and I thought he might have security. So I mentioned the name and said you could check with him.
So this is a little ambiguous, mostly because nobody cleared up the date on which this trip took place. So kind of the implication behind this is Brian Walshe is calling to check to see if there might have been security cameras because he's afraid that he may have been picked up on these security cameras. That's the implication. But it's not really clear. Is this the Thursday before the Saturday that was New Year's Eve going into Sunday that was New Year's Day? Or was this the next Thursday afterwards? Because the way he describes this is Brian tells him that this morning his wife left. Well, that would have been days after he says she left. So it's a little confusing about that. If this was Thursday, the 5th of January, then this may have been a half-hearted attempt by Brian Walshe to figure out, to make it look like he cared where Anna was, to make it look like he was actually interested in finding her. If it was the Thursday before New Year's Eve, well, that's an entirely new matter because now suddenly you have some evidence of intent. But I don't think that's what they were saying. I think they were saying that this happened after the event. I would guess that maybe the landlord just got confused about what Brian Walshe was saying about when his wife left. But in any event, one clear implication came through to the jury, and that was that that Brian Walshe was checking to see if there were security cameras. It had just occurred to him. Was it because the police had asked him, or was it because he was worried that he might have left a trail that would lead right to him? Now, another point that the prosecution made, the Commonwealth today, was about life insurance on Anna. And sure enough, there was life insurance on Anna payable to Brian. It was $1 million on Anna that was regular term life insurance and another $250,000 that was whole life insurance. They debated outside the presence of the jury, the lawyers did, about whether or not some additional information should come in. When you apply for life insurance, you have to fill out some forms saying what your health is, and you have to convince the life insurance company kind of where you fall on the scope of potential places. Are you healthy and you should get cheaper insurance? Are you not so healthy and your insurance should cost more? So as part of her life insurance application in 2021, just the year before this, Anna Walshe had filled out some information about her health. And she had gone through an interview process. They'd done a little bit of testing, just not a whole lot, just a little bit of blood and urine analysis, a weight. That was basically about it. They gave her a very good, very strong health rating. Now, why would this matter? Because we know from the opening statements that Brian Walshe is going to say that the reason Anna Walshe passed away was that it was sudden, unexplained death, just occurred out of the blue. He went downstairs to clean the kitchen, came back up, and wow, she had died in that brief period of time in the middle of the night. No idea in advance of this might happen. So let's listen to it. But the Commonwealth seems to think that the fact that there was insurance payable to him, obviously they're saying this is a motive. Now, one of the things that Brian Walshe's team was arguing is that the fact that a life insurance believes you're healthy isn't medical proof that you're healthy. So that's one of the things I argued. This is really a doctor and that sort of thing. Let's hear a little bit about it.
Were there any concerns that New York Life had with her health proving that?
No, she received a excellent health rating.
And, sir,
How do you know that?
That's the judge asking.
The every policy receives a health rating. Basically, Your Honor.
Okay, so let's stop there. So the defense pointed out the various flaws, and the judge said, I'm not going to let it in, but it more or less came in. What this witness would have said is she had gotten a rating of 1 out of 37, healthiest possible. But what the defense said to the judge, convinced the judge, oh, I should keep at least part of that out. But they had already admitted the life insurance form that showed that she was being given the best possible rating, that it was a high rating because she fit into the healthy category. So they more or less got that extra preferred rating in so that the jury knows the insurance company thought Anna was reasonably healthy. Now, just to run quickly through sort of the rest of the day and what happened, they put on William Foley from U.S. Customs and Border Protection, who said Anna Walshe did leave the country from November 23rd through December 7th. We know that in that period of time, we were told in opening statement she went to meet her lover in Ireland, but there was no other travel outside the country. So the prosecution is closing in on the idea that she didn't flee the country. She didn't suddenly get up and leave. Not that that's even really an issue anymore, because now Brian Walshe has admitted that she died. The question is just how it happened. Patrick Reardon, a canine handler, testified that they looked all around the house, outside the house for Anna, and they didn't find her. Thomas Menino, corporate security with JetBlue at Logan Airport, said that Anna Walsh's flight was canceled on December 25th. That's what she had told Brian happened due to weather, I think it was. And she got a refund. But then she had a bunch of reservations she was a no-show for on January 3rd, on January 13th, on the 16th, on the 27th, and on the 30th. All of those days she was a no-show. Again, more evidence that she was not alive, or she would have made some of those flights to come home and see her boys. So Greg Lawrence, Cohasset Police Department, did a well-being check on January 4th at the Walshe residence. And Brian Walshe told him the story we heard in the interviews. He said pretty much that he last saw his wife on January 1st. She took a flight to DC for work. He said he thought she took Uber, and he had tried to contact her, and this wasn't typical. She normally FaceTimed her children when she was away for work. So he had been trying to get hold of her and he couldn't. So Seth Fox testified for Lyft, saying basically what the Uber person had said, which was, or what is about to say, sorry, that she didn't take Lyft between December 30th and January 8th. So she wasn't using Lyft to get to the airport in that period of time. The Uber Foltz said that she did take it twice on the 30th, which would have been to get from DC to the airport and then from the airport to her home in Cohasset, but that was the last time that she took it during this time frame. Amy Waterman, sergeant from Massachusetts State Police, went to DC to look at Anna's townhouse where she lived during the week when she was working. And one word she kept using for this: neat, very neat. There was a closet full of clothing, including men's clothing. That does match with Brian Walsh's story that he kept clothes there, that they were going to move there, and they were kind of partly moved there. The third floor had 3 smaller bedrooms that were in a bathroom, and they were all apparently rooms for children. They had children's furniture, children's toys, they were children's clothing. So all of that suggested that Anna did want the boys to live there. And that fits with what Brian's story is, that he was going to move down there with the children. They would all live there as soon as his federal art auction fraud case was completed and he could leave town. So remember that tonight is Mod Appreciation Night. So let's stop for just a minute. I want to say shout out to our first 5, Dial M for Mildred, Oklahoma Gigi, Loretta Power, Chloe, and Melissa. We are about to be going into how Walshe fought back today. We're going to be asking the hard questions, but let's take just a minute to just say shout out to our mods and how much we appreciate them. I also want to tell you, a lot of you are familiar with Michael Lalonde, longtime listener, been around the channel. He has had both surgery and is getting chemo. So our thoughts and prayers go out to Michael. Bama Queen gave a very generous gift last night to the mods, and I just wanted to make sure I mentioned that. Lisa is thanking Marlon and Mama Pinks, our 2 mods. She has been a member for 3 months. That's awesome. We are so glad to have you for 3 months. And today's testimony was brutal. There is just no getting around that. It was absolutely incredible as days go for the Commonwealth. It was very, very dramatic. Marlon is thanking everybody for Jerry's rain jacket. For those of you who don't know, Jerry is Marlon's dog and well known by people on the channel as the most famous dog in the Netherlands. And now he has his very own rain jacket, thanks to you and your gifts to the mods. So all week long, the super chats will go to the mods. That's the first week of December. We do that here on the channel. Kathy Smith is shouting out the mods. So thank you, Kathy. Much appreciated. We will stop right there. And then I want to dive in because we have something huge to cover next. Okay. The question, when you have the amount of evidence that the prosecution has put in this case, if you add the Google searches from last night and all of those pieces of physical evidence that came in, and they looked really like they were something from a murder scene. But with all of that on the table, can the defense possibly get past this? Can they possibly do that? And the way they're trying to do it is by sort of chipping away, but focused on intent. What did he know before the time of the murder? Because he's admitted to two things: lying to the police and disinterment of Anna Walsh's body. So now the question is just, did he murder her? That's the only question left for this jury. So let's take a look at whether he's making any headway at all. It is a tough battle. Now, on the issue of life insurance, one of the things his defense team pointed out was, well, he never borrowed against it. He, in theory, could have borrowed against the $250,000 whole life policy, but he did not. He tried to get life insurance on himself first. He tried to say Anna was just an afterthought, and he couldn't get it due to pending criminal case. Nobody would insure him, give him life insurance because of that pending criminal case in federal court. So they wanted to say, look, Anna, he wanted life insurance first. Only after that he couldn't get it did they even look into it with Anna. But they really weren't able to quite make the dates work out. That was more or less what we kind of gathered, but it wasn't completely clear. Now, they did make some headway in one place, and I want to play a little clip for you about this, about the importance of the word murder in searches. You may remember last night, one of the searches was how to dispose of a body after murder, which implies that someone was murdered. I mean, otherwise you would just say how to dispose of a body. Well, one of the arguments that the defense wanted to make is, well, that is what he started out searching with. So let's hear what the defense argument was. This is Trooper Garino.
For you to stay on that same page 555, record 2057.
Okay.
It occurred at 6:36:22,
Yes.
and it regards body disposal options.
Yes.
No reference to murder, the word murder, correct?
That's correct.
At 6:36:30, the search query involves cool ways to be buried, correct?
That's correct.
There's no reference to murder, correct?
That's correct.
6:36:33, it's a query of above ground burial options, correct?
That's correct.
And there's no reference to murder.
Yes, that's correct.
Yesterday, you did testify to some search queries that did include the word murder, correct?
That's correct.
So if I represented to you that the first time the word murder appears in these searches is at page 596, record 2185, would you agree with me?
I see it here, so I can just take your word for it.
Okay. And that occurred at 11:28:43 a.m.
Yes, that's correct.
So the first time the word murder appeared in all these records was approximately 6 hours after these searches began.
Again, I'd have to take your word for it, but it seems that.
And that.
So I will give them some progress on that. I think that somewhat lowers the impact of the fact that those searches included the word murder in them. Initially, they didn't, but it was within 6 hours. It isn't like it was 6 days later. It isn't like he now knew that the police were considering him a suspect. It was pretty quick that he was adding that. And it's such a bizarre thing to add to the search. It doesn't really seem to fit with what happened according to his story. If his story was that she died suddenly in her bed, why is he hiding it? Now, I believe he's going to get on the stand and say, I was hiding it because I figured it was going to force me into prison on the art fraud case, and then my boys would be left alone. I believe that's the way he's going to swing this in terms of his testimony, because I think he is going to testify. And boy, is that going to be dramatic. We will be here for that. So do not miss that. So 6 hours in, it does include the word murder. And then there were some in between ones that were a little off too. Listen to this.
Search that we just talked about. That occurred right after a search where the query is best way to dispose of body parts quietly.
That's correct.
And that occurred at 11:27:56 a.m., correct?
Yes.
So by 11:27, he's searching about disposing of body parts, which is not how you would probably normally search if your spouse died and you wanted to bury them. You wouldn't be referring to them as body parts. You might write in, how to dispose of body or who to call, but you wouldn't be referring to disposing of body parts. So that seems a little off too. Now, one of the things that the defense had argued yesterday is, well, he was just throwing in different search terms because he was trying to get different results. Sometimes you have to adapt your terms to make sure that you actually are getting the results you need. Here's how that turned out.
So yesterday I asked you some questions about the use of additional terms to get a different search result. You remember those questions?
Yes, sir.
And that is one example in Exhibit 79, where first a search query did not use the word murder, and then it did use the word murder to get different results, correct?
I can't speak to the user's frame of mind when they're searching for something.
So I don't know that this is really going to work. I think back to when I was figuring out when my husband passed away, and granted he passed away in a hospital, but what I didn't type in things like, where to bury after murder, because it wouldn't have even occurred to me to do that, right? I was just trying to do the next step, the things I was supposed to do. I would not have typed that in order to get different results. It's an odd thing to type in. And it's one of the prosecution's strongest arguments, the fact that it's in those just 6 hours after. Does that indicate that it was truly murder, even in his mind? That's exactly what the prosecution is going to be arguing. I thought the defense also made kind of a little bit of headway, a small point, with the fact that Brian Walshe turned over devices voluntarily, apparently not quite all, but a number of them, and that he did not destroy anything on the hard drive. I'll give you my thoughts on this in just a minute. Listen.
I would agree that certain devices were turned over to the police on January 6th of 2023.
Yes, certain devices were.
And all the hard drives were intact in all those devices.
Well, yes, they were.
And there was no evidence that any of the hard drives had been tampered with, correct?
Well, the products that we were
Was
given,
there any evidence that the hard drives in any of those devices turned over on January 6th had been tampered with?
they don't have standard hard drives that a PC has. They have different hard drive types. They're soldered onto the motherboards of these devices.
So there was no evidence that anything had been tampered with.
That's correct.
And there was no evidence after a forensic examination of all the devices now in the possession of the state police that none of the hard drives had been tampered with.
Like physical tamper with, sir? Like physically, or like trying to take them apart?
That's one
Yes.
question. We'll do it that way.
Okay.
Physically?
Other than the damage to the devices, no, there was no tampering, like screws missing that I saw.
And when you say the damage to the devices, are you talking about the one iPad mini that was cracked?
Yeah, well, and the screen on the gray MacBook, the display itself was not broken, but the LCD screen had like a flicker. It didn't work perfectly.
And none of that affected the data within those devices.
No, that's correct.
So the problem with this to me is that all of this would be maybe helpful if he had turned over the devices and they clearly weren't damaged and there was nothing on there damaging to him. But there were these searches. There were all of these searches that were done that we heard about yesterday. So even though he turned this over voluntarily, even though it hadn't been damaged, what they found on it was horrible and devastating. So I don't know that this argument is going to really get them anywhere. The one thing I guess the defense is going to argue is that they looked before the murder and they really found nothing other than a few searches for divorce. And boy, they made some good points on that. Let's go ahead and talk about that now, because this was critically important, I thought, yesterday in what the government was presenting, that there were searches on Brian's computer on the 27th for about divorce. This was days before Anna disappeared, days before he admits he did something with her body. We don't really know all the details yet, but days before that, he was looking around the word divorce. But this was really, I thought, good testimony, good cross-examination by the defense here. Take a listen to this because it surprised me.
At page 240, record 887, and the search involves Katie Holmes' divorce.
Yes?
Katie Holmes is an actress, do you know?
Yes.
And so that is the first search that appears on 1227 that includes the term divorce, correct?
Let's see. I believe so.
And then there's the searches that we talked about, you talked about yesterday on direct. And it's fair to say, isn't it, that those searches regarding divorce you testified to, and you characterized them yesterday when asked by the Commonwealth, how do you characterize the nature of those searches? All showing divorce advice. Your words, correct?
Not gonna lie, I forget what I said, but I believe so.
Okay. So it's fair to say that if they ran from 8:33 to 8:50, that'd be a total of 21 minutes, correct?
Yes.
That's 21 minutes of looking at divorce, as you characterized it, divorce advice, and over 15 days of data that you extracted from the MacBook, correct?
Yes.
And these divorce searches, once again, they occurred after the diamond searches, right after them, didn't they?
Yes.
And they occurred before the Porsche searches, didn't they?
Yes.
I thought that was a pretty good point because yesterday the prosecution pointed out a search on, for example, well, let me finish that. Let me finish what I was going to say, and then I'll get to what the prosecution said here. But I thought that was pretty important because yesterday I thought this was the best shot the prosecution had at showing that intent, that he was really considering maybe they would get divorced. He was afraid of that. Maybe he would take action because of that. But when you look at this, I think it would have been better for the prosecution to put that in if the first search in just 21 minutes was Katie Holmes' divorce and that started it. It really does change what he searched to some degree. Now, some of the things he searched were, best state for Amanda divorce, something along those lines. Clearly, those two connected up in the prosecution's mind with why he would want to murder his wife. They believe that has to go with intent. But it really does change the way you look at it when you realize it might have had something to do with pop culture. It might have had something to do with what he was researching that had no connection to his wife. And at the same time, he was looking up a 4-carat diamond ring, which you would assume he would have given to Anna. He was also looking up Porsches, which she had made a joke about how she wanted a Porsche, or maybe it wasn't a joke, but she was talking about getting a Porsche and he was looking it up for her. And so those two searches right around a divorce that started with Katie Holmes' divorce, a divorce search that started with Katie Holmes' divorce, that doesn't really seem all that damning, not as much as it did yesterday. Now, the prosecution did point out, like I started to say, that there is one search on the general topic of divorce that happened on January 1. It wasn't just that one 21-minute segment. It was your spouse is missing and you want a divorce. And that was what he typed in on the first. That probably was after she died. I mean, I think by any account, Commonwealth or the Brian Walshe, everybody would say that was after she had passed away. So the defense also talked about that search we heard about yesterday, where there was a login to the Chase Bank where Brian and Anna had some accounts. And one of the suggestions by the Commonwealth was the reason he did that was because he wanted money, and this was motivation behind the murder of Anna Walshe. This was after she had already passed away. To me, it didn't seem all that strange to check your bank account, but the defense did have a really good point. And I guess this was a Chase login beforehand, but this is right around the time that he was searching for the diamond, searching for the Porsche. And they said, well, maybe they hinted, maybe he was looking for just how much did he have in the account? Could he even pay for that? And other than that, there weren't searches around the term of divorce. That was a point the defense was making. You tell me if this next one landed or not. I think what the defense was trying to do in this next little clip you're going to see is explain away that search about multiple searches about how to deal with odor from a body. Like what would baking soda help? There were various searches around that. So you tell me if you think this worked out.
Around the same time, there was a Chase login, correct?
Oh,
Yes.
You have to hear this. Give
Looks
it
like
just a
someone
second.
was shopping for a diamond ring or a diamond, correct?
I don't know if they were shopping for it, but they were looking at it.
And somebody was looking at Porsches for sale, correct?
That's correct.
And there was no divorce-related searches that occurred in the data you looked at from 12/25 up to and including up to the 12/27 divorce searches you told us about.
Not that I saw.
Okay.
And those
Here-
searches-
all right, so this is the part related to the odor from the body. And tell me if you think this
It's
works.
about how to deal with an odor. They don't even begin until January 3rd, do they? If you know, if you don't, that's
I
fine.
thought on the first there was one, how long it takes for a body to start smelling.
But not how to, that's correct,
Yeah,
but
but
not how
not-
to
yeah.
clean it up.
That's correct.
And not how to mask the smell or anything of the sort.
No, there is January 1st, 4:58. How long does a body stop smelling? Dead
But not
body
how to
stops.
mask it, correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
And not how to clean it up.
I'm not seeing that.
And
I just don't get it. I don't understand that point at all. It brought the jury's attention again to the fact that there were these really horrendous searches related to the body smelling and how he would deal with that. What does it really matter if he was searching that on the first or the third? I don't really understand what the point behind that was. I don't understand how it helped them. So if you get that, put that in the chat, because I really didn't understand that point. I didn't know why the defense would bring that up and seem to be saying, oh, but he wasn't searching about how to clean it up until 3 days after she died. I don't know. I didn't understand that. So there was an additional good point I thought the defense made, which was that the Walshes were really pressing for and asking for a short lease in the home where they were living there in Cohasset, Massachusetts. Here is their landlord talking about this.
the first 6 months of the lease, that was paid in full
Yes,
by Mrs. Walshe, Mrs. Diana Walshe.
yes.
That's his mother.
And was your intention to rent that property in smaller increments? Or that's just what came to you with the Walshes that time?
That's what came to me.
Okay. And in speaking to the Walshes, it was your understanding that the reason they were looking for short-term housing was because the family was planning to relocate to Washington, D.C.?
That's correct.
And after the 6 months, they approached to extend the lease, right?
Yes.
And what month was that?
August or September, something in that.
2022?
Yes.
Okay. And when they first came to you to extend the lease, they only wanted to extend it for 3 months.
Yes,
And that was because their trip to DC was impending, was coming up.
yes.
Okay.
So I do think there's a little bit of help there, because one of Brian Walsh's statements or arguments is going to be that the entire family planned to move to DC. They planned to stay together. They weren't getting divorced. They were, in fact, they had set up a home there in DC, and they planned to move there permanently as soon as he was able to do that, which hopefully would come, in his mind, would come when the federal court granted him probation instead of forcing him to serve some jail time on that art fraud case. So the fact that they wanted this short lease suggested they also intended to stay together. That was their plan for the future. So I think that's somewhat of a point for them. Now, they have worked super hard on that hole in the ceiling theory the defense has. They tried to keep the jury from even seeing it. There was right above, I think around the master bedroom somewhere, maybe above the bed, there was a hole in the ceiling. It's like somewhere in the master bedroom area. And the defense said, well, it's irrelevant. Excuse me. So why should it come in? Because, Judge, they admit it's irrelevant. And the prosecution said, well, the reason we want to put that in is to show the jury, look, we looked around, we noticed that. We noticed that there was some sheetrock in a bottom drawer next to the bed. Excuse me. So we noticed all of that. We didn't just miss it. It wasn't like we didn't notice that at all. We did a good and valiant effort to find all the evidence in the case. And well, good grief, we're going to have to stop for a second. Okay. So the defense thought, I think, is this creates an inference that there was some kind of wild chase through the house, some kind of wild violence with stuff being thrown around enough to make a hole in the ceiling. The judge said, I'm going to put it in because they're allowed to show that they made every effort and that they looked very hard to find evidence. They're allowed to do that. So they also asked the landlord about this hole in the ceiling. It seems to really bother the defense. I don't know that it's, I mean, when you've got these other pieces of evidence, I don't know that the hole in the ceiling is like the biggest thing in the case, but maybe it's just one they think they can chase down and disprove. So here's what the landlord said about that hole.
So, for example, if a large hole in the ceiling happened during their tenancy, you wouldn't run over there and get up on a ladder and drywall the ceiling and fix a hole yourself.
No, I wouldn't.
And that would be something that isn't regular wear and tear, right?
I would say that's not regular wear and tear, no.
Okay. So that would be something that the Walshes would be responsible for paying for and covering.
Sure, if they actually did it, if it wasn't something that the house had control over, yes.
So I guess kind of the thinking behind this for the Walsh defense team is that if maybe they didn't have enough money to repair it, they had enough money to look for Porsches and 4-carat diamonds, but not enough to repair that hole in the ceiling. And so maybe they were just putting it off. Maybe they were waiting until right before they moved, something like that. And therefore, it had nothing to do, they want to tell the jury, with the missing Alana Walsh, with her disappearance or with her body. Had nothing to do with that. So trying to address that trash, those pictures I showed you at the very beginning, the large amount of trash, the items that got laid out on the white sheet and photographed and shown to the jury. I don't know if this worked either. Again, I really want you to tell me in the chat, in the comments, whether in your view, this works. And I'll tell you kind of my thought about it. This is how they're dealing with all those items, because a number of them had tested presumptive positive for blood. We haven't had the person come in who says, yep, this is actually really, truly blood, but we've had the presumptive positive. So that's happened. And now what we are going to have somebody come in. I think the ones they put in evidence are likely the ones where they actually found DNA or blood from Anna Walsh. So let's take a listen.
I don't know any specifics about a trash compactor, no.
So can you tell the jury if you have any information that some of this evidence that's been introduced that was taken out of a dumpster there, that it had first been in a compactor and then transferred to the dumpster, or you just don't know?
I do not know.
So when you're handling this evidence that you're collecting, you're really taking care not to have one item touch another item, because you don't want a transfer between biological evidence between item 1 and item 2, correct?
Correct, to the best of my ability, yes.
Sure. And in this case, and in the collection of this evidence, it's fair to say, isn't it, Mr. Gould, that you have no way of knowing before you were able to begin your examination of these items at the scene how they had come into contact with each other, either within a bag or just being pulled out by people before you arrived.
Before I arrived, correct.
And there is such a thing in your expertise in forensics that includes characterization of transfer of biological evidence, correct?
That is within the realm of our responsibilities, yes.
And what that simply means is that one item that has some either biological evidence or something else, if it comes into contact with another item, it can transfer that to the other item. So item A that may have had a red-brown stain on it might transfer some of that red-brown stain to item B, whereas before, item B never had a red-brown stain.
That's correct.
It could very well be that those hairs that are seen attached to the slipper, they could have transferred to that slipper because they were already in the bag or they came into contact with something else.
Absolutely, yes.
And the floor of the warehouse actually looks somewhat damp in the photo.
Let me pause it there. And so kind of the argument here is, well, granted, maybe there was blood on more than one item. We don't have the definitive answer on that from the right witness yet, but I think that's the implication. And there was blood on a whole host of items, but maybe it's just because they were all jumbled up together. The problem was, this isn't like in a lot of cases where they test and there's presumptive positive, they show a picture and wow, you can't even tell anything's there, and maybe a small dot of something, but you can't really tell. Here, these things looked like they had a fair amount on them. It wasn't like it was subtle or hard to see. It was right there. So even if they were right, that means there was a fair amount to start with, because there was plenty to spread around on a number of different items. So I don't know that that's going to work, but y'all tell me your thought. Here's another one he did. And I really am not sure about this one hitting the mark. So it started, the first sentence we were into it, that the floor of the warehouse actually looked somewhat damp in the photographs. Okay. So remember, they took the items out of the trash bag, they put a white sheet down, and they put a bunch of items spread out on the white sheet.
It does, yes.
And it was infected.
I can't recall exactly the conditions, but it is the floor of the facility, yes.
And so it's fair to say that a lot of terrible question, I apologize. It's fair to say that you have no idea what was originally on the floor of that warehouse before you arrived.
Correct.
You just know that it had the appearance, it may have been damp, but you don't know what caused the damage.
That's correct.
And then these items were placed on that. Items, like for instance, the items have been admitted into evidence here, and they could have been then be caused to be dampened by what was on the floor of that warehouse.
That's possible, yes.
Okay, so you tell me, what do you think about that? I'll try making it big. Marlon, maybe you could let me know what occurs on that. You tell me. This is how I see it. Apparently, Brian Walshe acknowledges, and we'll hear more about this when he testifies, but he acknowledges that he put all these things into trash bags and put them in the trash can, that he put them in the trash can in a large dumpster, not at his home. He went to an apartment, miscellaneous apartment, and put them in this dumpster, and then they were found by the police. And then they have the gall to complain that the floor of the warehouse for the police was just not clean enough. It was wet. How dare they put the items on there? Couldn't that have caused some kind of problem? Like, you don't know what was on the floor beforehand. Well, two things are true. Number one, we could see the sheet that they were put out on. And number two, the one thing we know wasn't on the police warehouse floor before this was Anna Walsh's blood or Anna Walsh's DNA. So I don't know. I'm not really sure that really resonated. But again, you tell me if that resonated with you. Maybe I have that wrong. Okay, I want to thank a few more people. Remember, this is Mod Appreciation Week here on the channel. So let me thank some more people. Let's see, I believe we left off with Kathy. So I want to thank Suzanne Huffman. Thank you so much for your gift to the mods. All super chats all week go to the mods. MP Now says, thank you, mods. You're the best. I could not agree more. Marlon and Mama Pinks are two mods. And Kylie H is catching a live. We're glad to have you here with us live. And thanking Marlon and Mama Pinks for keeping the chat so pure and making us all feel very welcome. That is such a great thing, isn't it? I'm so appreciative to them for creating that kind of environment. I really appreciate that so much. KS also thanking Mama Pinks and Marlon and appreciative of them and sending out a big hug to both of you. Jebby Canfer is thanking the mods, as is Mary Meelan is thanking the mods. Libby Christie is able to join us live tonight. We're really glad to have you. And even if you're not live, you can still give a gift to the mods, and you can do that just through the, I forget what they call it, but it's not super chat, but it's some other like chat gift, comment gift. I don't know what they call it, but you can still do that. There's still a button to do that. Okay, so this is Libby Christie saying she's glad she can be here live, and also thanking our mods. And Gringa Ellis, who has been a member for 7 months, which is awesome, has caught a live, and we're really glad to have you with us. So let's talk overall. What does the defense have after this? What do they have left? And where are they going to be able to go with this? Can they convince a jury to focus on intent, the preparation in advance? After these searches and this evidence, does the jury even care? Legally, is their intent is the most important question in this case. Legally, that's the question that it all comes down to. There's very little evidence of lead up to this crime. A lot of times you have preparation and planning and things like that. We don't have much about that. We have those searches around divorce, which I thought the defense made some really important headway on today. The best theory is one that the judge hinted at today, that Brian Walshe found out that very night that Anna Walsh was cheating. We didn't really get a full explanation of it, but the judge hinted that maybe she was asking, is that going to be your theory, more or less, to the prosecution, and trying to make some decisions about evidence around whether or not that was what they were going to be claiming. But a very important question is the jury going to just jump past this? Because in my experience, juries do tend to look at the big picture. And the big picture here is unbelievably bad for Brian Walshe. I mean, these searches, this evidence that they found, his lying to the police, make it very difficult to believe this story he has about sudden death. I don't know that anyone really will end up believing that. They might, though, be persuaded that there isn't evidence of intent. There's no evidence that leading up to this, he had made any plans or preparation or intended to do this. Maybe it was just a spur of the moment thing where he was in the heat of passion and he suddenly did this. I think that I would be very, very interested in y'all's opinion. We may do some polls tomorrow night. Don't forget, we go live at 7-ish. It takes me a little longer on trial days, but so 7-ish, 7:15 or so. We may do some polls because I'm really curious what y'all are thinking about some of this evidence. But this is so damning. I don't know that the jury is going to sit around waiting for intent. I think, they're going to be very focused on, can we believe this guy at all? And he has given them very little reason to believe him so far. Now, there is a very important decision. There are two huge things, in fact, coming up in the case next. One is the judge is making a decision about whether or not to let the jury hear that Brian Walshe pled guilty to disinterment of Anna Walsh's body and also to lying to the police. To me, that decision is all important to the defense. Will it be enough? I don't know that it will be enough. I'm not going to say that, but it's all important. Here's why. I think the defense is hopeful that the jury will look at him and say, I think he loved his wife. I think he just lost his cool, or, I don't know about this sudden death thing, but anyway, they can make the decision about that. But let's say they don't believe it. Maybe they'll think, well, he lost his cool, but hey, he's already admitting and will suffer punishment for these other two things that he's admitted to. If they think they might let him walk out of that courtroom and nothing happened to him, there is zero chance of acquittal in this case, in my opinion. I just cannot picture the jury saying, well, we're not really intent. We're just going to let him walk free, despite all of this mountain of things we've heard him do. I think it's going to be really hard for them to do that. So the defense wants them to hear about this plea of guilty, and the Commonwealth doesn't. The judge has said she's researched it. There doesn't really seem to be a clear answer. It's kind of a weird situation. So she said that what she's going to hear from them tomorrow. The defense is going to turn something in that will help her evaluate the defense position. She said, here's what I really want to focus on. I am going to instruct the jury, as we always do, that one of the things you can't do as a jury is think about what the sentence would be, what will happen if you rule. You're just supposed to decide what you believe, guilt or not guilty. That's your decision. Then you let me worry about everything past that. So she's saying, I'm going to tell them not to consider the sentence or anything like that. So tell me why this is something that's relevant to the jury. Why does it matter what the jury hears about these other two? Isn't your only real reason to convince a jury that he's going to be punished? And then you're getting them to think about the sentence, which isn't what they're supposed to be thinking about. So we will get probably some argument on that in the morning. And it's unbelievably important, critical to the case. The other thing is we are apparently going to hear from Anna Walsh's lover, William Fastow, who has apparently some text messages, and they are hotly contested. Will they come in? Well, apparently they are controversial and they are dramatic. The defense wanted them out, apparently lost that battle already. And now what the defense is pushing for is to have it all come in. Just if in for a penny, in for a pound. For context, if you're going to put one text in, put them all in. So the jury then suggested that maybe the Commonwealth theory is going to be that it was a text Anna sent to William at 10:07 on New Year's Eve that ultimately led to what occurred here. And because somehow he either found out about it or knew about it, was following her text, it was kind of unclear. The judge suggested either he knew it because he observed her texting when he sent it, and she said, yeah, that's not very likely because of the other text which related to their affair, which she would not have shown her husband, or that maybe he knew of it because he was getting her messages somehow mirrored it or had some ability to get it. So those are two huge issues that are coming up: the text messages between Anna and William, and then the court's decision about whether or not to tell the jury about Brian's 2 guilty pleas that he's already entered. All right. Well, it was quite the day, as you can tell from what we talked about so far. Let's take a few questions and see what everybody has going. If you would please put question marks at the beginning, I would really appreciate that. It will help me spot it more easily. I want to thank everybody again for participating in Mod Appreciation Week here on the channel. And it is an honor to be able to give all the super chats this week to our mods. We are so appreciative of them here. So thank you for participating with this. I see Janice in early. If she transitioned naturally, why the blood on the robe and slippers? Right? Right? It's like this explains so much, and yet there are such big gaps. That is such a great point, Janice. It also doesn't explain that search we talked about. Can you get DNA off a knife? Can you get HIV off a knife? I don't know where that came from. We don't know. Does this have anything to do with the case? It seems to me like that ought to be helpful to one side or the other. If nobody has HIV, then maybe something else is going on. And if somebody does, maybe that relates to the motive, right? I wondered about that. But anyway, Janice, you raised just a great point. I don't think there's a clear answer on that. Excellent point. Freddie's cat has a question. Did anybody say whether the man's clothes in Anna's townhouse were Brian's or Anna's boyfriend's? So the only thing we got related to that, Freddie's cat, was that there was a question asked of the witness that were there men's clothes like more than one place there, or were they all in the closet? Because we had already heard that Brian had clothes there. Maybe, in fact, that's the reason that we heard that in the defense opening. They said Brian had an overcoat there and Anna was bringing it to him because it was getting cold in Boston and he left his coat down in DC. So the defense is going to say Brian had clothes down there. There wasn't any answer directly on whose clothes they were, but I think sort of the presumption in what we've heard so far is it was Brian's. Okay, will the jury hear about the 2 plea deals? KS asks. Such a great question, but I think we will find out tomorrow. The judge seemed to be leaning toward no, keeping that out, that the jury will make its decision based on the evidence and no information about those 2 plea deals, but we will find out. That would be a blow, I think, to the defense, which I think really wanted to get that in. Well, I know they did. Den Ben asked, so her boyfriend takes a stand tomorrow, I think Friday, not tomorrow. I got that from an implication. They didn't state specifically. Is that correct? And when will they rest the state? The judge told the jury that they're ahead of schedule, or I think she said, maybe we're right on track, maybe even a little ahead of schedule, something along those lines. So I think that it'll be probably a number of days more before the state rests. I don't think it'll be this week. They do seem to be moving like greased lightning through these witnesses, but I don't think it'll be that fast. I think there will still be more to come. Right now, we haven't heard from a number of people who are going to tell us some information about Anna in the days before this, Anna and her relationship with Brian, that sort of thing. So that's still to come. Sharon, as he pled guilty to disinterring her, so she was buried. I know that is exactly what the word means. Sharon, right? Disinter, to take out of the burial, but that is apparently in Massachusetts the umbrella name for kind of abuse of a body, a corpse. And it could cover more than one thing. It doesn't just relate to what the word, even though that's still called that. I assume that used to be what it was called, and now they've included some other offenses under that. So that is technically what the plea was. But in this case, it has to do with what has been referred to in the text messages, which is different body parts and different things, using a hacksaw, using just horrendous stuff, but we don't know too many details about it. I assume Brian Walshe is going to have to testify about all of that on the stand. I think he has to take the stand now too. All right. I don't think the boyfriend will take the stand tomorrow, although it's possible. Jebby Camphor, will the lack of a search warrant combined with the affidavit from Brian's attorney limiting the search be an appellate issue? Possibly. I don't know. I can't really answer the question. Okay. Let me rephrase that. Absolutely, it will be an appellate issue. I think your real question, though, Jebby, was, is it a winner appellate issue? Will they argue that? Yes, that's the kind of thing that gets argued on appeal. But I think your question was, will they win? And I don't know the answer. I don't know whether it's strong enough that he can win on that, but it's a good question. Sharon asked, what does NGRI mean? It was mentioned earlier. Well, if I said that, I don't know what I was talking about. It was a momentary leave of my senses. I don't know what it means either, Sharon. So I can't answer you. Betsy Sue, does the jury know yet about the boyfriend? Yes, I think so. They've heard enough references. I think that there were some references in opening to relationship, and one of the things the defense said was he didn't know about it. So it may have happened, but he had no idea until afterwards. So I think the jury is aware about this. Oh, there we go. Not guilty by reason of insanity. Oh, thank you, Mama Pinks. I don't know that I said that tonight, but thank you. Scooter asking, what do you know about the support system in court for the defendant, the victim, such as parents, siblings, and friends? Very little, Scooter. I don't really know what they've done. We have seen numerous pictures of the mother of Brian Walshe. Her family is from Serbia, so I don't know if any of them have been able to come to the trial. I mean, it's a good distance, and obviously it would require a lot of organization and to be able to get here and to be able to be here. So I don't know if they have come or not, but we have seen his mother. All right. Okay, I think we're good. I want to thank everybody again for participating in Mods Week. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. This case is dramatic and it is changing by the day. Two huge things coming up in the next day or two. We are going to be uncovering this piece by piece. So take care, everybody. Stay safe. I will see you back here tomorrow for the next chapter in one of the strangest cases we have ever covered